Hello there, Holly Rustic here with Grant Writing and Funding, and I'm here to help you grow capacity, increase funding, and to advance mission. Now that might be the mission of the nonprofit that you're currently working at, or if you're a nonprofit consultant or freelance grant writer, the many different missions that the nonprofits that you're working with. All right, so today, big question. How much do freelance grant writers make? Or how much can they make? All right, now this is an interesting question, and we're going to talk about 5 main things that kind of contribute to how much you can make as a freelance grant writer. But surprise, surprise, there really is no ceiling, right? A lot of times we want to put this glass ceiling, I can make up to this, but honestly, there is no glass ceiling, so take it out, right? So the other thing too that we really want to think about is that really the question that you're asking? Is it how much can freelance grant writers make, or is it how much can I make as a freelance grant writer? And I mean yourself, the I, right? Or, and to really understand that, another question could be, how much can I charge as a freelance grant writer, right? So to really unearth those questions and to break it down, there are many different things that we need to look at. And we definitely go over those in our grant professional mentorship and in our freelance grant writer master course. But today I want to talk about 5 ways that you can really understand how much freelance grant writers can make. And once again, it depends and as much as you want, right? But it really goes back to number 1, your goal. What is your actual goal, right? So like, what are you out there to retire and have this be a side hustle, you know, a very part-time side hustle that you can actually make a little extra income, but you don't want to work that much, you know what I mean? So that's going to be a very different conversation than somebody else who is looking to transition out of their full-time job and replace their entire salary, right, with all of their benefits, and maybe they're going to hire staff and etc. So those different situations are going to be very different, and it's really up to the individual of what their goal is and how much they want to make, right? How much they want to work, what their expenses are, etc. So let's break this down. So first we just kind of talked about, it really depends. There's no cookie cutter answer. I know you want one, but how you understand how much you can make, let's look at that because that's a little more interesting. So after you figure out your goal, what your goal is, let's also look at what your experience is. Experience always plays a huge part in how much you can charge, right? Because it's really about how many years of work that you bring to the table, how many grants you've written, you know, how many grants you've secured, have you reviewed grants as a grant reviewer, and so much more. So really when you're bringing into your experience, and remember though, you don't have to be a paid employee to get experience. You can be a volunteer, you can be an intern, you can be a student and get experience. And the best way to get experience is to write grants, right? So writing grants, so, you know, even if someone says, oh, we are requiring 3 years of experience, and maybe you only have 1.5 years, but you've written like 25 grants and you've gotten like 10 of them awarded, like, holy smokes, that's amazing. So even if there's like that, it's really about how much time you're putting into the grant writing thing, right? So it's not really about the number of years, it's really how much time you're dedicating to it, what you're doing. So definitely the more experience you have as a grant writer, the more you can charge. And just to kind of flip the switch a little bit on this is a lot of grant writers, once they reach a certain rate, they just kind of stop raising their rates, even though they continue getting experience. It's almost like this, they think they hit a threshold and that's it. You don't have to do that. You could always increase your rates every single year or whenever you want, right? Now the other thing too is you newbies out there who might say, I really don't have a lot of experience. Can I still charge? Well, one way that you can charge is, definitely you can, especially if you've taken a course and you're starting to educate yourself, you're further ahead than somebody who has no idea how to do grant writing and wants you to exclusively focus on it for them, right? So you can definitely charge on that. But another way you can quickly raise your rates is to hire somebody else who's more seasoned to you to review your work, right? That you can count on as a mentor, as somebody that can actually review your work, then you'd want to pay them to do that. So you'd have to incorporate into your rates and raise your rates. So you are getting, and then that might take some of the pressure off of you as well as a newer grant writer, right? To be able to charge more, but to know that you have somebody who has a lot of years of experience reviewing your work. All right, so now let's look at the next thing. So we talked about years of experience. Depends on what your goal is, years of experience. The next thing we want to look at is geography. Now, for a lot of you, this may not be a huge deal because especially if you're writing grants online and you have clients all over the nation, all over the world, right? In different countries, etc. Then you just charge your rate, right? You're going to have to figure that out, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But you know, if you are serving clients exclusively in your geographic area, you know, boots on the ground, then you are going to kind of want to look at what labor rates are just to have an idea. And you can find those at your Department of Labor website just to see kind of what service industries. Find out, you know, what bookkeepers are charging, accountants, lawyers, etc. Yes, you fall into professional experience, okay? So you want to make sure that you're just not saying like, you know, a lower income job. You are a service representative. And a lot of those wage rates, you have to remember, are for salary. They're not for consultants. So in our last step that we're going to talk about today, you want to make sure you add all that into what the rate is you see on Department of Labor website. Okay? But just that can give you a baseline for what other consultants are kind of charging, what the market rate is. The other thing, of course, in your geographic area is to, you know, create relationships with other consultants. Like I mentioned, it could be nonprofit consultants. It could also be other professionals like lawyers, like bookkeepers, etc., right? And say, hey, how much are you guys charging, right? And that kind of gives you a good idea of kind of what the market baseline is. So that is a great idea to do. And of course, if you're not geographically specific and you're you're wondering what to make your rates at, you can look online and see what other virtual-based professional consultants are charging, but this is going to be all over the map, right? It's going to be all over the map. So you also have to remember that it could just kind of give you a baseline, but don't just say, oh, another grant writer is charging this per hour, so that's what I need to charge. Not really, because we don't know. We're going to talk about some other things here. All the things that go into why they're charging what they're charging. It can inspire you to raise your rates potentially if you're seeing these other higher rates out there, right? So that could be a good thing. So now let's look at the next thing about is how much can freelance grant writers make. It also depends on the types of services you are delivering. Okay, so if you're writing foundation grants exclusively, and some freelance grant writers, that's what they want to do, you may have to get more clients then because you're not going to be charging the same as you would a federal grant, right? So if you also write federal grants and foundation grants, you know, you can have a mix of clients then. So here's the thing. If you say charge $2,000 to write a foundation grant and you charge $12,000 to write a federal grant, right? Then you need 6 foundation grants to every 1 federal grant as far as the income coming in. So you can kind of figure it out, and that could be fine because you could have 1 client where you write 6 foundation grants, and it may be way easier than writing 1 federal grant. So it really depends on your expertise, what you want to do, and so much more. But it is just to say, what services are you actually providing? And this could also kind of change the parameters of what you can make because you can charge more for certain services. If you're actually going in and doing training for a nonprofit, you can charge more than just offering an online course, for instance, right? So there's a lot of different things that you can do to make more money involved in what kind of services you offer. Now, the next one I love, it's my favorite by far, and it's really the main thing about how much you can make as a freelance grant writer, and that is your confidence. What is your confidence in pricing? And this is why I was saying, you know, you can look online to see what other people are charging. You can talk to people to find out what they're charging, but honestly, everybody has their own relationship with money, and some people will have a very healthy relationship with money, but most people don't, especially when we're looking at a lot of women, right? A lot of us women were into this patriarchal society where it's really kind of said that we can't make as much as men. We can't charge as much. We should offer discounts. All of these false things, right? Those are all lies, you guys, right? So, but we're kind of brought up to believe that we need to work so much harder. And it's not true, right? So it's like, if you're seeing a lot of rates that may be very low, say $25 an hour, and you think, oh, okay, well, that feels kind of comfortable with me because I don't think people would pay me $100 an hour. Like, who am I, right? And the thing is that a lot of people are going to pay you $100 an hour and much more than that, right? If you have that experience, if you're bringing it to the table, they want to pay you for your expertise. So a lot of it does go back to how confident you are really is how much you can make. And I'm not trying to say an arrogant, cocky confidence, like I'm just going to say this number like way out there, but I'm trying to say that usually women, especially, and 67% of freelance grant writers are women, they're not charging enough. So very quickly, you can make a lot more money if you just raise your rates. Bam, that's the only thing you really need to do. But it does go back to getting that confidence. And how do you get that confidence, right? It's by surrounding yourself with other people that are in this field, that are also on the pathway of having a good relationship with money, right? It's about being able to look up to people who are charging more and to have more confidence. Well, if they can do that, so can I, right? So it's about having that support system. And we definitely have that in our grant professional mentorship. Always telling people, raise your rates. And then they do. And the great thing is when they do, and then they say, oh my gosh, I put the price out there. I was so scared to. I wanted to discount it, but I didn't, even before the nonprofit asked for that. And then they didn't even bat an eye. They paid it. Like, that's amazing. And they're my ideal client now, right? So definitely, this is something that is the main thing on how much money you can make, is really how much confidence and how healthy of a relationship you have with earning money. Okay. All right. So now let's go ahead and look at the final one we have today. If you make $1 million, right? You make $1 million. I love it. Then if you're spending $950,000 though on your expenses, you're really only making $50,000, right? So the thing is how much money you can make, and I mean in pocket, net, after expenses, how much money you can make, it really then depends on what your expenses are as well. And definitely some expenses are, I wouldn't necessarily say good, but they can be included for your business to pay for instead of your personal to pay for. So that's kind of fun too. But we do want to have a hold on our business. We really want to have a good understanding of what our expenses are to know how much we can make. So some expenses that you are going to have as a consultant, I'm just going to rattle them off here. Some of them, and these are not exclusive. These are just some of the big boys here. Taxes. You definitely want to put aside 25% of every dollar that comes in. You want 25 cents going to taxes. Retirement, health insurance. We're going to have any kind of computers, office supplies, etc. Office space, even your home. So you can even pay off your company can actually pay off some of your mortgage or some of your rent, which is cool. But you have to have designated space and talk to your accountant. Some of your other expenses are also your phone, your internet, anything you need to do to communicate with customers, online software that can start getting heavy a little bit, like your web email provider, all the things, right? If you do Calendly, if you do all the things, right, that can all start adding up, but you want to track all of that. And also profit, right? Your salary, which profit and your salary, two different things. But yes, you want to pay yourself, your business. That should be part of some of the expenses, right? Boom, paying you. So these are definitely not exclusive, but there's definitely a lot of those in there that you need to consider, because when you really look at, well, how much do I make? It's, if a client gives you a $10,000 contract, say $10,000, and then you say, oh, I just made $10,000. Well, your company made $10,000, right? But what did you make? Because we have to first look at what are your expenses. So definitely there's a lot that you can go into that. All right, so how much can you make as a freelance grant writer? The sky is the limit, all right? But really it goes back to, it's really not that big dollar amount that you want to, like, oh, I made this much. I mean, that's fun too, right? But it's really about what's your number for what your goals are. So we talked about what your goal is. We also talked about how much experience you have. That really kind of contributes to how much you can make. So keep learning how to write grants, keep writing grants, right? All of that so you can keep your experience up. We also touched on geography. So if you are geographically based, you can kind of get a pulse on what your market is. Your market in a rural area in Iowa is going to be very different than New York City, right? So those are going to be different rates that you're going to be able to really put out there. But remember, if you're online, that might kind of level the playing field a little bit. We also looked at what types of services you provide. So the more customizable your services are, definitely the more you can charge for that. And then we talked about confidence, the big one. How confident you are really is the ingredient on how much you can make. Then we also need to look at your expenses. Are your business expenses huge? Maybe you're only making $20,000 a year right now. You just started out, right? And your business expenses are 75% of that. So that's like, ooh, we got to really look at that. So expenses really do play a role. And yes, you do need to spend some money for your business. Absolutely. And there's some really smart ways to do that. But it is nice to have a pulse on that and to see like how you should grow in different ways, how you should invest in different ways will really have a really profound effect on your business. So how much can you make as a freelance grant writer? Well, you know, from me, I'm saying it depends and the sky's really the limit, but I would love for you to answer me in the comments how much you're making as a freelance grant writer. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. All right, I'm Holly Rustick with Grant Writing and Funding, and I'll see you next time.